Thanks, Marinda. I think you took half of our introduction there, but don't worry about that, that's fine. So, welcome back, everybody, and good afternoon. I do have to have this joke in there about the caffeine, so I hope you all had some caffeine in the break, because over the next 20 minutes, we're going to need you to have that caffeinated focus to solve a very frustrating puzzle. So my name's Steve Overton, as just been told. I'm the Solutions Consulting Director here at Tealium, and together with Rupert, we're going to explore how Evoke went on a journey to solve and unlock the true data value in their organisation. But before we dive into the mechanics of the journey, if you like, I want to place you all in a scenario that best captures the chaos in a lot of organisations' data landscapes. So just imagine for a moment that you're trapped in an intense escape room. And the only way out is to solve a giant jigsaw puzzle before time runs out. But as always, there's a catch. The pieces of the jigsaw aren't laid out on a table in front of you. They're scattered across dozens of different locked rooms. And then some pieces are missing, and some pieces are duplicated. And as always, you don't have the key to unlock some of those doors. Now, that feeling of being stuck or not able to see the big picture is exactly the feeling of many data analysts face on a daily basis. So today, with Rupert and Evoke, we're going to explore how they unlocked those doors and they solved that puzzle, and how they connected their front-end customer signals to their back-end data to create this single source of truth using Tealium and Snowflake. Nearly forgot the second part. And along the journey, we're also going to go and talk about some of the issues and how they overcame some of the biggest obstacles of any data transformation project, and that's gaining overcoming cultural resistance to gain trust in the data. And like all good fairy tales and stories, we're going to give you some great results at the very end of the presentation. So, Rupert, if you'd like to just introduce yourself with your real name and the background to Evoke and what you do, and then we'll dive into how they explored the puzzle.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So hi, I'm Rupert. I am the optimization and implementation manager at Evoke, escape room survivor as well. And I'm the Tealium owner for the business, so my role is really about activating, collecting, and connecting all the data with all these different endpoints and for all these different users. And so that really covers everything from data governance through to consent and all of these kinds of things as well. Evoke is a global leader in betting and gaming. We best known for brands like William Hill, 888, and Mr. Green. And we're really focused mainly in Europe and the UK, and we're really targeting customer experience and technical excellence.
So I guess being St. Paddy's Day and Cheltenham just being in the past, everybody is probably quite familiar with at least one of those brands. And operating in a sort of very highly regulated industry with the complexity of balancing governance and customer experience and trying to drive revenues is a real tightrope to walk along. So maybe when we want to explore the journey that you've been on, and I know this wasn't an overnight success, so back in 2019, I know you were operating a all-in-one cloud solution, let's just call it that, for your web analytics. And then you made a sort of a strategic choice to go best of breed. So what kind of led you to onboarding Tealium and Snowflake back in 2019?
Yeah, so as you said, we were a one-stop. We were using one provider for everything, and we had a very traditional analytics setup. A team using a tag manager to write some code and track some events and We could do some very basic reporting, we could fire some pixels, but not much else. And likewise, our BI team and our data teams could see transactional data, but they had no kind of context around why were customers betting, why were customers logging in, or any of these kinds of things. So we knew we needed to make a change. We had this issue with data accuracy, attribution, and analytics. And we started off, as you said, by moving to GA. And that started linking our marketing and our web data together. But that didn't really solve our problem, which was how do we improve our fundamentals? And that's where Tealium came in. It says 2020. I think from talking to a few people, we were probably doing it for about a few years before that as well. And what Tealium did when they came in was they gave us this opportunity to introduce governance. We engaged with teams and we said, we want you to own the implementation of data points. So our data implementation became much more solid. And we were able to introduce the data layer. We were able to introduce standardized reporting and all of this kind of stuff, which really moved us forward. Separately, the data team was sitting there going, we're doing everything in the data warehouse. It falls over constantly. We can't get anything out. We need to change. And they, completely separate to us, said, right, we're going to bring in Snowflake. That's going to give us our layer over the top, which is going to make all of these kinds of things accessible. And so this is where we were originally, and this is where we got to by sort of 2021, 2022. And this then meant that we had this foundation, which we hadn't had before, to start to answer actual business questions, like how do we make use of this data that we've got and actually personalize experiences and drive value?
So I guess at this stage, just want to go back one if you want. You've kind of got you've got your two pillars. You've now got your data collection and your web behavioral data going into Tealium via GTM, and then Tealium IQ, and then now you've got Snowflake with all your back-end consolidated data. So what sort of made you then want to bridge the gap? You know, I think you talked about an air gap in rehearsals and stuff between the two. So what made you wanted to integrate the two together?
Yeah. So, I mean, as you were saying, we were basically operating, we could have been two completely separate companies. We had no concept of what the BI team was doing, and I would say probably they didn't really know what we were doing either. And we had this issue where we had the fundamentals in place, and we wanted to start personalizing experiences, but all of these, the context from all of these channels that Snowflake could see, we couldn't. And customer stakeholders were coming to us and saying, you know, we'd really love to, we want to do some personalization, we want to do it in real time, but do you know, did they see this email? Do you know, do they have this flag? Did they get this promotion, X, Y, Z? And we didn't. So we weren't able to personalize in a way that the stakeholders wanted. And this went on for a bit, and eventually we said, right, we're going to put in a batch connector to enable us to get some of that data into the front end.
Oh, okay. So I think in the intro we talked about sort of the cultural changes and what was needed in the business as well. So, you know, if you were to look back, you know, what would you say were some of those organisational changes that were made to maximise the benefit of the tech integrations?
Yeah, so that's, as you said, we've gotten to the point where we've got Tealium and Snowflake, we've got the fundamentals, and we're starting to link them together. And we still have this issue where we don't know we're not driving value. And we'd done the tech integration very quickly, And then came to the question of, what do we actually want to do with this solution? What do we want to do with this richer data we're getting? And what that meant was we needed to kind of overcome these issues around governance and data, just the simple things around things like data understanding. What does this data point mean? And you know, started bringing stakeholders together, and we'd have stakeholders from 10, 15 different areas of the business, and they'd all have a different idea about what a data point meant. So we needed to align across that. We needed to align governance. We needed to do simple things like say, okay, we can send data from Tealium to Snowflake, but what does it need to look like when it gets to Snowflake so that it's meaningful? What data points, what context do you want with that event to make that real, to make that work? And this kind of went on, and I think I might have mentioned trust. We had this issue as well with trust, where people were saying, okay, you've got this data, but we don't trust it. So what we did was we actually went and we said, okay, we're going to put data into Snowflake, we're going to reconcile it, and we're going to demonstrate how this all works to the business. And once we did that, those conversations which we'd had previously where people would say, we don't trust the data, this data point over here does not match this data point over there, went away, and we could actually begin to have these conversations about, let's get the value out of the tool. And I think that was what was really noticeable from all these changes, is that it's not the tech which was really the issue, it was the getting everyone aligned and actually figuring out what it is we wanted to do that was the challenge.
Okay. So I think you were one of the first companies to adopt the Snowflake Snowpipe streaming API to get that real-time data flowing from the customer signals into Snowflake, if you like. So integration's done, real-time data's flowing from one to the other. You kind of hinted that the business changed in the way that they operated. How would you say the organisations and the departments changed their way of working once they now saw all of this data coming together from a company point of view?
So I think the first thing is that before the integration, you can see everyone was running around. They were doing their own thing, as you mentioned, escape rooms. I would often be in meetings before Tealium came in, and people would go, okay, the web data says that this change was bad. And then they'd go, okay, that's very clear, it's understood. And then a week later, I would be in a meeting and someone would stand up and go, it's brilliant, we've done this. And we'd go, okay, well, but the web data was bad. And they said, yeah, but the BI data was great. And we'd be left scratching our head, and then the week later they'd come in and they'd go, the web data was brilliant, we've used this. I said, but the BI data was bad. And they go, no, but the web data shows that we got 1,000 extra clicks. And so what changed was that no longer happened. We went to a single source, which meant that our reporting is more meaningful straight away. But also, there was a change in terms of idea generation. So when previously teams wouldn't engage with us beyond that question of, is the data accurate? And once that question kind of went away, we moved to a world where we started to explain to people and say, look, this is what we can do. So, I mean, for example, I sat with a sports team and that said, look, we can see the product preference, and we can see where they are in the site, and all this other kind of stuff. And someone in that meeting said, oh, this is amazing. We've got a feed, a sports feed, that kind of gives us like cards and goals and, if it comes to things like tennis, like the points and all this kind of stuff. Can we link this together and basically say for someone who's, someone who's a Liverpool fan, show them the events in the Liverpool game. And all these teams started to come up with these ideas and think about it in terms of their own systems rather than ours. And that was really exciting, because then we started to get this kind of snowball effect of people saying, oh, we've got this idea we want to try, and other teams going, well, we don't want to miss out on this thing, because the directors are getting really excited about everyone's going to get these personalized news feeds, which they're not immediately, but we then, it became this kind of virtuous circle of people developing and more people coming in and saying, can we be involved?
It's nice to have competition for generating new use cases internally, I would imagine. So, the theme for today has always been, people come to the conference to understand the value and what a customer is using the tech for to get what value. Value is probably best described in currency, I guess, where euros, pounds, dollars, whatever. So the exciting part, the happy ending to the story. So what were the results, I guess, financially and operationally that Evoke realized from utilizing the integration?
Yeah. So I think first, one thing that I would say before I get to this slide is I've really noticed that the speed at which we do things has just dramatically shifted. And I think of this example where, particularly with marketing vendors, we go back and forth about, have you sent us the right data? We're missing, maybe we're missing this ID, or maybe we're missing this parameter or whatever. Yeah. And before, that would have been months of kind of back and forth of, oh yes, we can see it, no, you can't see it, and oh, now something else has changed. And what we can do now is we can say, okay, let's just send that data point into Snowflake and see what comes out. And we can do that, and a couple of hours later, look at it and go, oh, we can see, yes, the data point is correct, or no, actually, we can see the data point is wrong. And that kind of flexibility means that we can fix problems much quicker, but also we can respond to opportunities much faster as well. The next thing, which I've mentioned trust a few times, and it's been a huge issue for us over a long period of time. When we came to reconcile the data, we could see that we were getting 98% of the events, web events, compared to transactional events. So we basically bridged the gap, and we could also say, because we could see things like, consent and things like that, we knew where data wasn't flowing. Yeah. In a way that we didn't before. So when marketers came and said, oh, I'm only getting 60% of the events, it's like, well, it's because those people just aren't consenting in the way that they did before. So this has been really powerful, because we've moved now to a place where people don't even really talk about it. It's just a given that, yes, the data's fine, we can use it. You talked about pounds and pence. 5.7 million in additional NGR. NGR is a gaming term. It's effectively kind of, it's like gross, something equivalent to gross revenue. This is the direct result of getting web data into Snowflake. Now, our analytics team have done a couple of deep dives into user journeys, particularly around login failure and browse not purchase. And you can see from the slide, an extra 10% of customers moving through the login funnel, or 5% of logged in customers doing a purchase potentially means an extra 5.5+ million a year of money coming in. And it's just, this is just the beginning of what they're looking at. So there's potential there for a lot of improvement down the line as well.
Yeah, some significant results there. I know Marinda mentioned VAR earlier, and the yellow cards and the red cards. I see the time has gone very red, so we'll move on very quickly. So it's been 6-7 years, maybe a bit longer, in terms of this journey to go from like data chaos to this new foundation. But I know you've got some exciting plans ahead for this year and next year. Maybe you can just share very briefly with the audience what's in store.
Yeah. So very briefly, because I can see the time's gone
Oh, you can't see it?
blank. It's really, for us this year, the next 12 months, is really about activation and getting value out of that foundation that's there. So particularly around real-time use cases, we're looking at getting that data back into Tealium and activated across a load of different channels. Wouldn't be a presentation without AI, I don't think. We're doing a lot of modeling in our Snowflake platform, and we're looking to get those back into the front end as well to activate against customer journeys. And I think beyond that, we're just looking at building on where we've got to and building on that foundation and really, hopefully, cementing it so that it carries on no matter what changes come.
Cool. Well, I think it's been a theme of today where we get kind of repeat performances coming back the year after telling us what they did rather than what they were planning on doing. So hopefully this time next year we can be set up here talking about your AI initiatives and everything else. But for now, I'll cut it short, but thank you very much for spending the time and sharing the revenue in your journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.